This classwork, which has been entirely in the new dimension, Christ, has as its basis the revelation of a presence and power that cannot be defined by human thought, and which ordinarily is not brought into play in human experience except by those who have caught a vision of a spiritual universe. The ordinary human thinker does not penetrate that realm of the spirit. Their entire life and reasoning faculties and awareness remains in a three-dimensional world, a world that can be seen, heard, tasted, touched, smelled, and thought about from the standpoint of what can be seen, heard, tasted, touched, and smelled. In that realm, we have might, power, strength, wisdom, cunning. We have all forms of human powers either aiding us or harming us, either being used constructively or destructively. And the human world is made up of that entire picture, sometimes good and sometimes bad. And the reactions that come to an individual from what they behold with their five physical senses and the reasoning mind. The few who penetrate that scene and see across into the spiritual realm have discerned that there is another power, another presence, that is neither power nor presence in the human sense of understanding. It is not presence because it is not outlined form. It is not power because it does not supplant or overcome or rule or govern other powers. Yet it is a presence in the sense that the spiritually illumined feel it, sense it, cognize it, are aware of it, even while the it has no actual form, outline, color, or dimension. And it is a power because its very presence reveals harmony, even where discord, disease, sin may have been. The mystics of all ages, and when we use the word mystics, we mean, of course, those who have attained some measure of conscious oneness with God, some measure of contact with cosmic consciousness. The mystics of all time have discerned this invisible presence and power and availed themselves of it, and through it risen to great lives of peace, harmony, joy within their own being, although many of them have suffered persecution from the outside world, this, of course, has never disturbed their inner being. They understand the reason for this persecution, since they well realize that this power would destroy those and the activity of those who might permit it entrance into their consciousness, and they are not ready yet to see the advantage of giving up their life, their personal sense of life, for this divine life or spiritual life. To the materialist, it is a very difficult thing to imagine being happy by giving or being wealthy by giving. But all his training is that happiness and wealth are to be achieved by getting. This three-dimensional world, which is what is called the human world, material world, but really is only a false concept of the real, is never destroyed in and of itself. It is seen through. It is understood for what it is, and in that understanding comes the dissolution of it. In other words, there is no such thing as an objectified, physical, mortal, material universe. The only universe there exists is this spiritual, real world of God's creating. And the proof of that is that the moment a degree of inner vision is awakened, this world becomes the only real, and the mortal concept begins to lose reality and to disappear. Probably many of you know that as long as there has been recorded history, there have been secret religious orders, secret religious brotherhoods, under many names, formed for many different purposes. I think most all of them very good purposes. And they all require a form of initiation. The initiate must go through certain trials, tests, examinations, before they ultimately are admitted to brotherhood in these religious organizations. And while the actual initiation may differ in exterior form, the tests and trials and examinations are all alike in this: the initiate must go through harrowing experiences, such as if they have loved ones at home, in their meditations and in their periods of quiet, they behold pictures of these loved ones dying or being killed or robbed. If they are married, they may see visions of betrayal, falseness, deceit. Other loved ones may come under other forms of evil. They behold all this. And the temptation is, of course, to leave this order and get back home and protect their loved ones or bury their loved ones or do whatever is necessary to restore harmony in their experience. And of course, at each one of these steps, some initiates do fall out and go home, and that ends their spiritual progress. Others manage to get past that and find themselves in other harrowing experiences and drop by the wayside. But eventually those who survive come to one ultimate test. Everyone in every one of these orders goes through the same test. The final test is being brought to the brink of a cliff and being told, and of course one must be obedient, being told to jump off onto the rocks beneath or the waters and be killed. Of course it's so high, the rocks are so terrible below that there is no hope of survival. It is actual death. But then the whole thing is, which will it be, death or disobedience? If it is disobedience, there's no hope of being admitted to the brotherhood. If it's death, that also may mean no hope. On the other hand, who knows? Might be one here or there might survive, since there are some brothers in the order. They must have survived. Well, there's the test. Each one decides for himself. And needless to say, anyone who is obedient and jumps off the cliff automatically becomes a member, for the simple reason that long before they can reach the rocks, they have awakened and found that the whole thing was an illusion. They had been hypnotized into witnessing all of these pictures, from the very first to the last. None of it was ever real. And, of course, those who stopped earlier in the game and went home found, to their dismay, also that none of that had ever happened, and they had just lost their chance for spiritual progress. Those who survived the final test were happy to be admitted to the brotherhood, but something greater had happened than being admitted to a brotherhood. They had learned the entire secret of human experience. It is a state of illusion. Such conditions do not exist anywhere in the realm of the real as they were tempted to see and believe in. And of course, if you want to know it, we are the initiates. And we are right now taking the degrees of brotherhood. Right now we are being tried with experiences of lack or limitation, sin, disease, and some of us actually death. And you'd be surprised at the looks on some of the faces of the people who thought they died. They're quite surprised when they find that the whole experience is an illusion. Never happened. There they are, beginning right where they left off. We may not have realized that we were undergoing this initiation, but we are. Everyone who has been responsible for spiritual healing work knows right well that they have never healed a disease or set a bone. All they have done is pierce the illusion of hypnotic suggestion and seen through to the world of God's creating, to the man of God's creating, to the laws of God's creating. And that is why we have today healers, metaphysical healers, spiritual healers. Every one of them, in a measure, has seen through the illusion, has seen that God is the only life, the only wisdom, the only law, the only substance, the only cause, and the only effect. And so, when you face this human experience from the standpoint of believing that you have a choice, remember that the only choice is to have a good illusion or a bad illusion, to have a rich illusion or a poor illusion, as long as we are viewing life from this appearance standpoint. Now, the human mind cannot pierce the veil any more than the initiates in the brotherhood can pierce that veil while under hypnotism. It is only as they come out from the hypnotism that some have, by divine grace, enough light to know that they had been hypnotized and to disregard the experience they had gone through. Others, still carrying a measure of hypnotism, believe that it was real and run out to do something about it. Now then, this faculty that enables one to pierce the veil, to see through the illusion, is called Christ. It is called soul faculties. It is called spiritual consciousness. And spiritual consciousness means consciousness of the Spirit, or consciousness of the things of the Spirit. And you can see that material sense could never have that. Some, fortunate indeed, come unto this plane of existence with some measure of that illumined consciousness, enough at least to behold some degree of reality. Others, and most of us are in that category, have only this more material sense of things and find it very, very difficult even to believe that there is a universe of harmony right here and now, and that we, all of us, may enter it at will, not by choice, but because there is no other universe, and all that is necessary to behold it is a tiny measure of that touch, that Christ consciousness, that spiritual awareness. And so the question that comes to us, and this is the question that will come to you as people come to you for help, and is the answer you will have to give: how may we have the ability to pierce that veil, to see through the illusion, and to know that it is very safe for us to jump, since the only place we can jump is into the everlasting arms. The answer is this: you have already the first seed of that illumination. It is because you have that seed that you started in the beginning on a spiritual path. It was that spiritual seed that drove you there. Until you had it, you could not have come to any spiritual teaching. It would have bored you to death. It would have angered you. It would have seemed nonsensical to you. Because the things of God are foolishness with man. And the mere fact that this isn't foolishness to you is the indication that already you have risen above the level of mortal man. In that degree, then, you have no choice but to continue. Nor need you have any doubts or fears about the ultimate result. The fact that you have been placed on the path is enough. Probably the greater efforts, fears, or doubts you entertain temporarily about your ability to attain may, for a while, prevent the attainment. Or, the other way around, the greater your ability to relax, the greater your ability to understand that you are not here of your own choice or by your will, but that a seed was planted in you and that it is sprouting, the more you can realize that and just step aside and let it take its normal course, the more quickly will you awaken into your membership in the brotherhood. It is inevitable. You can't miss. The awakening is an act of grace. It is an act of God. for which you have no personal responsibility. The government is upon his shoulders. Only, mark this, only as you look out on this world from the standpoint of appearances will you see yourself having to struggle and strive to achieve spirituality. The longer you look at life from that standpoint, the greater the struggle. But in this very moment, as you drop that barrier, as you drop the sense of looking out at a world of illusion and trying to improve it, as you quietly sit back in the realization, certainly, what else is true, what else is logical than that God is the creator of this universe, and it's the creator, the maintainer, and the sustainer. And if this is true, and we have entered a state of illusion, what could be truer than that only God could be the destroyer of the illusion? And so again, where is your personal responsibility? You haven't any. Be normal, be natural, live every single day in accord with a pattern that is placed before you in the morning. Yes, we have an obligation, but even violating it will not keep us out of heaven, since already the seed is planted and is growing. But the obligation is keep in thought, so far as is possible, the idea that you must never judge either man or circumstance from looking at the world from the standpoint of its appearances. Stop looking at sick and sinful men and wondering how to make them well. Stop looking at the pictures that are painted in the newspapers and radio and television and wonder how you are going to improve it. You aren't going to improve it. Illumination is going to dissolve it. And the greater part of illumination is the realization that only God can do that. We spoke the other morning about the fact that the salvation of the world, that is the redemption of the world, the revelation of the world in its spiritual perfection and purity, is not only inevitable, but it is not even far off. Progress toward that is so rapid that I don't think I could be surprised if I woke up tomorrow morning and found the entire world at peace and in the arms of God. Even that rapidly wouldn't surprise me too much for this reason. It is only 200 or 300 years ago that there was no scripture in circulation. It's only 400 years ago or 5 that a printing press printed a first copy. And hundreds of years later, there weren't many copies in existence, not many for the layman. So it's really only in the last 200 or 300 years, 250 years, that men have had access, men and women, have had access to Scripture, which is a revelation of the power of love, a revelation of the power of grace, a revelation of a God in individual affairs. It is only in these last 100, 150 years that we have had the great art, music, and sculpture of the world made available to the common man, the ordinary man. Education up to then was purely for those who entered the church, and outside of the church there was very little of education. And so all of this cultural good has come into realization, and philosophical and spiritual, scriptural, in just these last couple of 100 years. It is only in the last 75 years that the world has been given this revelation of the nature of what we are facing as human experience. Up to that time, the world was battling evil as if it were a reality. They were battling the devil as hard as you'd battle a four-alarm fire, and not making much headway with it either. Now, in this last three-quarters of a century, the world has become less afraid of hell and damnation, less afraid of God, less afraid of disease, with the exception of a few that are held in wide fear. But on the whole, the world has much less fear of disease and much better ways of handling sin. In other words, human consciousness is being illumined rapidly, illumined with the understanding of the grace of God, illumined with the understanding of a divine presence and power, and above all, illumined with forces of love. You can see that expressed in human form in the relationship that has come into commercial affairs in the last, shall we say, 30, 40 years. Watch it in the corporations of the country and business of the country and see the greater degree of love there is. Watch the greater effort of nations to help other nations, of peoples to help other peoples, in spite of their prejudices and hates here and there. The overall scene is good. Now, when human consciousness is receiving a sense of love, a sense of peace, a sense of realization of a presence and a power, it is not far from heaven. It is not far from spiritual realization. And that is happening, and happening rapidly. If you were to look at the world from the appearance world and count up how many wars there are or how many nations in distress, this may not be so evident to you. But look at it from my side of the curtain, and you will see not so much the outer struggle and strife that's going on, but the degree of illumination that is entering consciousness, human consciousness, on a broad and wide scale. That is the picture I see. Now, we can carry ourselves a step further than that so as to continue to be the light for the rest of the world, in the degree that we do not become fascinated, hypnotized by the world of appearances, but go behind that world with even this little understanding that we have been given, that we have to this moment demonstrated, and look at it always from God's side. That ultimately is going to be the saving grace. The ability to look out at the world from God's side, not from the side of appearances. Now herein lies the secret of dehypnotization. That is, the secret of waking out of the illusions of sense, temptation, mortality, ignorance, superstition. Look out from God's side. First of all, be sure in your mind that you have caught a glimpse of God as the infinite power of good, as the infinite substance and law of the universe. Then as you look out from God's side of the world, you will find a God-governed world, a God-maintained and a God-sustained world, And whatever of illusion there is, you'll find God to be the destroyer of it. And as you realize this, personal responsibility drops off of your shoulders. Personal responsibility drops away, and you know right well that you do not have to struggle for enlightenment. It is coming to you as fast as you can accept it, as fast as you can respond to it. Just continue on in the path in which you find yourself. Continue on in the way and in a way that satisfies your own integrity, your own inner consciousness, that you're doing all that may be expected of you, that you're doing all that is up to your highest sense of right, and beyond that, you have no responsibility. The government is upon his shoulders. Looking out at this world from the God side, you quickly behold the sons of God, and you witness a degree of individuality based completely on spiritual values that shows you that man does not have to be saved. Man does not have to be rescued. Man does not have to be healed. It is just an awakening process. But since one with God is a majority, one awakes, and that means one Christ, can awaken millions, 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 millions. One Jesus, rightly understood, can awaken millions of people on the face of the earth. One Mary Baker Eddy has healed and awakened more millions than you have any idea of, and so has one Mrs. Fillmore, and so has one somebody else. It only takes one, only one, to have the light that sees from behind the scenes, from behind the spiritual scene. Now, you can see that in these questions, we have the question based on life as we see it from mortal experience, and then seek a solution to it. And there is no solution. There is no solution to the human scene except waking up out of it. There is no solution to the human scene in human means. The solution lies in spiritual means. If you are thinking for one single moment of the unhappy relations that have existed this last 20 years between what is called capital and labor, you will know right well that there is no human solution to it. There is a spiritual solution, and that is as you begin to see that man whose breath is in his nostril is not a reality, is not a law, is not an evil, but an illusion, and that actually even there stands the Christ, you will soon find capital and labor in harmonious relationship to each other. And that's the only solution. It is in the same wise that you can start with two people, any two you know. Let them view each other as human beings. Let them believe for a moment that one derives their good from another. Let them believe for one moment that their interests may be antagonistic to another. And you have the makings of all the wars and all the discords and all the ulcers and all of the troubles that ever could be in a universe of millions of people. Just multiply the human relationship existing between almost any two people, and then you'll find what the human world consists of, and you'll also know that there's no solution to it on the human plane, because always each one will be seeing what their rights are, and the other will be seeing their rights. One will be seeing their privileges, and the other will be seeing the other's duties, and so no coming together. But just with any two people in the world, let one begin to understand the spiritual nature of individual being, and you will begin to see a change in relationships, even if it's only at first on one side. Even on the side of the one who has caught the first glimpse of spiritual life, you will find less antagonism, less greed, less anger, less fault-finding, less of the negative qualities of humanhood. And it would be an utter impossibility for one individual out of two to consistently be living in a consciousness of love and forgiveness and not have the other one respond in some measure eventually. Or, as we know, respond or move. And that would just leave room for someone else to come in harmony, in peace with the new idea, the new dimension, or Christ. The moment one individual begins to look at life from the standpoint of God, starting every opinion, thought, every conviction from the standpoint of God as the first word, the moment an individual begins that mode of life, all the rest of the world begins to respond to it. There's no question about that. No question about that. We have just again had the experience of one of our friends coming in contact with an intoxicated man and quickly coming over and seeking an introduction and talking about God for a half hour. That has just happened again. You can't miss. You just can't miss. Begin to see life from the standpoint of God. That's the new dimension. God, the Christ. Begin to see this universe not from the standpoint of man whose breath is in his nostril, but from the standpoint of Christ as individual being. Looking through the appearance of the reality, and the world will begin to come to you in this new dimension. Not entirely. There still is plenty of hardened thought in the world. That's not our concern. Our concern is that we begin, since we are of the household of God, we have caught a glimpse, at least, of true being. We are the ones who must start this in our own way. And, I could go further than that and say, not that we are the ones who should. No, we have no choice in this matter. We are the ones who are doing it. We are the ones who will continue to do it because of this grace that has been given to us, even in this measure, to know that God is the principle of this universe. Love is the real influence on earth as it is in heaven. And so, and also, we are the ones who know the meaning of that term, my peace. Not as the world giveth, but my peace. And so, because we know that, and because knowing it we can't unknow it, because knowing that it becomes our natural life, every one of us, to some extent, is obeying that impulse to behold spiritually rather than materially. And because of that, and because of the fact that this will continue to grow upon us, it is inevitable that the world respond to it, and that this light go further and further into human consciousness until all of it is illumined. The biggest concern there is in this class, the biggest reaction that I get from this class in my work with it and for it, is a concern for our responsibility, and can I do enough, and will I do enough, and will I measure up? That is why I would like to say to you, no, you won't. No, you won't. But I'd also like to say to you that neither will you fail. Neither success nor failure rests upon your efforts. You are but the instrument through which the Christ, the divine idea of life, is finding entrance into human consciousness. That's what we are. I say you, of course you know I mean we. That is what we are. We are the instruments now being used by the divine consciousness, by the divine grace, to spread its light into darkened consciousness, into the consciousness of what is called this world. The responsibility is not on your shoulder. The choice is not yours. I said to you the other evening, we have no power even to become like Lot's wife. We have no power to turn back, not even the power to look back. Whatever it is we've left back there is gone. We have no choice but to continue forward. Why? Because we did not bring ourselves here to this state of consciousness in the first place. You have not chosen me. I have chosen you. There is something in your consciousness and mine. There is something in our consciousness that has prepared us to be the light of the world. Probably a tiny little bit of a light right now, but nevertheless, the light of the world. And it will continue to express itself in us and through us. It will maintain us, it will sustain us, and wherever necessary, it will destroy the illusions of sense so that we may perceive the mesmeric nature of the world looked at from the standpoint of appearances. No one who has been in this class will ever again be quite as hypnotized by appearances as they were before. That is inevitable. Nobody ever again who has been through this week or last or both can ever again be quite as horrified by the bad pictures, nor can they rejoice quite as much in the good pictures, since everyone who has been through this work has been touched by the Christ that so often has been consciously here in our midst, touched to the degree that the appearance world will never again be that evil or disastrous or fearful or doubtful. Everyone who has partaken in this work, whether in the closed class or in that open work at the center, because we had magnificent work at that center. We have had high states of spiritual unfoldment, and there must have been great spiritual consciousness brought to bear and a good awakening that some of the messages have come through that we have heard. And so, with this assurance that we have experienced the activity of the Christ, that we have beheld the very presence of the Christ, how can that leave us untouched, or how can that leave us where it found us? Oh, no. That would be fantastic. We might doubt our own ability to understand or progress, but can we doubt the ability of the Christ to perform its function in us? And has the Christ been present here to no avail? Does the word return void? No, not when you are talking about deific power, Christ's power, the presence of the Spirit itself. There is no such thing as a touch of that finger. There is no such thing as a grain of illumination that does not appear in the outer world as greater harmony, greater peace, greater health, greater supply, greater joy, greater something or other of a spiritually good nature. impossible. And so, even were you to doubt your own capacities, even if you were to doubt your own motives in being here, do not doubt the activity and the presence and the power of the Christ once you have felt it, been touched by it, or have seen it. Never. And again I say, if you want to doubt it, go ahead and doubt it, because even that will not interfere with the presence and the power of the Christ to destroy every illusion of sense. In other words, do not be so fantastic as to believe that when the presence and the power of God has appeared, that anything you or I might do or leave undone can interfere with it coming to fruition. All of our faith must be placed. No, it mustn't be placed. Don't have any faith in it if you don't like. What difference will that make to God or the Christ, whether you or I have faith in it? Can its activity be stilled once it has been realized? No. So whether or not we doubt, whether or not we fear, whether or not we think that we may not live up to this, it's all the same. It's all the same. The finger has written. There's no question about that. The handwriting is on the wall. Our consciousness has been touched. It has been touched to the extent of bringing us together in, let us say, a room full of people, all on one path, all of one mind, in one place, desiring but one thing, more light, more light. Just the mere fact of being together must make us benefit from whatever light, hope, courage, faith there is in our neighbor's thought or consciousness. And so we not only benefit by the activity of the Christ in its own persuasion, but also from the light that our neighbor has caught. This is one occasion when we may borrow the light from our neighbor, and not only may borrow it, the light from our neighbor's consciousness is shining upon us in this very room. And each one of us is benefiting in a measure by the light in the consciousness of his neighbor and of every other one in this room. And the result is inevitable. The result is that the tiny measure of light that we have glimpsed will pour forth into this universe in ever-growing measure, not only lighting us on our way, but what is more important, proving to be a light unto those who are still in darkness. And why is all this? Because of you or me? No. Because the activity of the Christ is inevitable. Because for hundreds of years, the activity of the Christ has been penetrating human consciousness, opening it wider and wider and wider, giving it ever more light and more light and more light, until we have reached this glorious age, when not only we have seen and felt the light which is God, but we have caught a glimpse of the greatest truth ever revealed, and that is that the appearance world is not a world to be destroyed, but to be understood, seen through, not feared, not hated, not battled, seen through in its nothingness, in the illusory nature of its fabric. No greater blessing will ever come to this world than the realization of the fact that we must not be fooled by appearances, and that once the light has touched us, we can't be fooled by appearances. Those who are fooled by appearances to the extent of deadliness, dullness, grossness, superstition, and fear are those not yet awakened or touched by even the tiniest measure of light. But in the degree that this light penetrates consciousness, in that degree does the illusory picture of sin, disease, death, lack, limitation, war, volcanoes, earthquakes, and all the other evils of human existence, in that proportion do they disappear from off the face of the earth, because they've never had existence as reality. Their only existence was the same as the initiate's experience in the Brotherhood. It was one of hypnotism. The point of this is only that when those periods of temptation come, and come they do, and come they will, to believe in some particularly forceful or evil appearance, be alert. It'll be helpful to be alert and to remember quickly that you are not dealing with that appearance as it seems to be. You are dealing with an appearance that has no substance and no law and can't do anything. And in the measure of your quick response to that memory will your freedom come from the fear, the doubt, and the delay in the demonstration of good.